All right. Good morning. Mic check. Good. Sounds like there's some audio. Let's open up the YouTube stream as well. There it is. Okay, chat room. Nothing on YouTube, huh? Weird. Okay, what else was I going to do? Oh, I was going to announce to Twitter that the tournaments are starting soon. What's with YouTube? Scheduled for May 4. I don't understand why the YouTube stream isn't working. Let's see. Okay, I can close Twitter because that's been tweeted. What is going on with... There it is. Is it finally on? Yeah. There we go. Okay. Happy Sunday, Bumps. Hey, Hockey Chess Dude. Yes. Live it is. I'm scared to ask what you need cheering up from. I don't want to bum out the rest of the crowd with your bad news. Let's see, what do I need to do? Okay, so I need to find out how much the Najdorf course costs while we're waiting for our tournament to start. Somebody asked me how much the Najdorf course costs. $30. All right, I found it. I found that info. Yeah, public schools are definitely different. So, we've determined that the stream is live and working. We can see and hear. Greetings to B, Bonghead. Our main goal and focus here today, folks, is on viewer games. We're probably going to have players somewhere from about 200 up to about 2,300 playing 15 plus 5 rapid time control games. Some people play 1 or 2 games. Other people might get in like 6 games or so over the course of the arena. I'm going to try to comment on like 6 to 9 games so I can rotate through each of our rating sections at least twice, maybe 3 times, and provide some level appropriate instruction for players at different rating levels as we watch those games. That's going to kick off in about 18, 19 minutes. So until then, we basically hang out, talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, and like let people know how to get into the tournaments, right? So let's check if the play command is working, for example. I don't know if we have to do that, Hockey Chess Dude, but yes, my apologies in advance to anyone who doesn't win every single game they play against the exact opponent they wished they got paired with in the time control that they wanted and the opening selection they wanted, maybe. Let's see. Those links for the tournaments look about right. Oh, we got Crump Chump pumping us full of money. Thank you, Crump Chump, for those delicious Bezos bucks. I saw an interesting thing earlier this week that Bezos' ex-wife had given away like huge amounts of money. I think it was something like $2.9 billion in a year, and it said something like it was more than anyone else had ever given it away in a year. But then interestingly, even though she's giving away a couple $1 billion every year, her net worth goes up every year anyway. Amazing, right? That you could give away billions of dollars and your number never goes down. Well, it's probably good that she's giving it away, right? All right. So that link looks like it's working. Let's check some of these links. What's your dream, Dripman? Tell us some of the things that you dream about. So I click on one of these arenas. Dark Warrior wants to be friends. Having billions of dollars. Okay. Hear that? Thank you, Meg, for the random question. This is exactly the time for random questions. Sometimes I'm in the middle of commenting somebody's game, right? And then people pop in the chat and they ask me questions like, how should I learn chess? And I mean, I want to answer their question, right? But then I'm also thinking, like, well, if I interrupt all this commentary. So anyway, long story short, now is the perfect time to ask random questions. So the painting behind me, my mother gave it to me. She's the one who painted it. She is an artist by profession, personality, through and through, her whole life since she was a kid. And it's her representation of how I explained to her that some chess dreams could maybe look. Yeah. Interesting. Hockey Chess Dude, on the topic of charity, so to speak, says that he thinks he saw an investigation or a research study showing that the lowest social classes financially give a higher percentage of their income to charity than upper class elites, etc. That may be the case. This was just she'd given the most in terms of net dollars, not in terms of percentage. There's probably somebody with $50 who gave away $20 who beats that percentage, Hockey Chess Dude. Yeah. B Bonghead asks, will practice improve this? Yes. B Bonghead was asking specifically about blindfold chess, like will practicing playing out games blindfolded in your head, first 10 moves, then 12 moves, etc. Will you slowly get better by doing that? The answer is not only yes to practicing will help you improve blindfold chess or blindfold visualization of chess, but practice will help you improve basically anything, any human skill, Bonghead. With some parameters, like you can't jump off a cliff and fly, and practicing jumping off cliffs won't make you better at flying, right? So there are things that we just literally can't do, but skills that a human can have, right? Like, I don't know, singing on tune or knitting a sweater or whatever. Almost any normal human skill you can improve by practicing it. And blindfold chess is no exception. You'll definitely get better with that. And Dripman's dream for now is playing decent chess. Yeah, that dream I can help you with more than the $1 billion thing, Dripman. It seems more attainable for you. And it's something I can get behind, My theory is for you to get $1 billion, you'd basically have to defraud somebody somewhere or do something that I wouldn't really want to see Dripman doing. So, or I guess marry Jeff Bezos and divorce him. But by now there'd probably be like a prenup and you wouldn't get anything that he made before you married him. So I actually wouldn't really wish $1 billion on you based on my understanding of the world right now. But to play decent chess again, yeah, we can do that. Hey, Richie. I am well, thank you. Hope you are too. Hey, Gabriel. Well, that's an interesting theory from Aram Hassan. Check out this quote, folks. If you say you want to improve, then you ought to know what's good for you. But obviously you don't, because if you did, you would be improved. So we don't know. And Gabriel points out that billionaires don't necessarily have $1 billion in cash lying around. They just have a bunch of stocks that are worth $1 billion and other holdings, Generally, a very small percentage of it would be liquid. Wow. Oh, we got great questions flowing in, folks. Don't forget to join the tournaments as well. Okay, Gabriel knows some stuff. Yeah. There's a lot of cool stuff to talk about here. All right, so Mig Modicus asked, how long ago since I was a club player? I crossed 2,000 probably when I was 15. So it's been almost 30 years, maybe like 28 years. And how long did it take me to get through all that stuff? I was, when I started playing, I was sort of like a natural 12 or 1300. My first rating was 1300, then it went back down to 1200, then then it went up to 1,300. I wasn't an expert on rating systems then, so I don't know why. I don't know exactly what was going on, but I think it probably went down to 1,200 just because I was beating really low-rated players, because I won something like my first 10 tournament games. But anyway, let's say I was around 1,300 for the first year that I played tournament chess. And then the second year, I went up to 1,500. And the third year, I went up to like 2,100 from 1,500. So that's about my trajectory. And then I spent a full year in the 2,100s. And then I became a master. Can I help you find a place in the USA where we could all put our funds together and make a new community in the middle of nowhere and live in peace? Man, that's a heck of a dream, Hockey Chess Dude. I don't have the answer, but if there's a big group of people who want to do that, I will join and I will bring my funds to the party. So Renga asks if you want to move into a commune. I would probably love to. Hockey Chess Dude would probably love to, yeah. But not a cult one. Yeah, exactly. Like the Shire with internet. Yeah. All right, hopping over to YouTube. Gabriel Cumming says that lists like the Forbes billionaire list actually don't necessarily list who is really the richest in the world. And Aram is continuing to give us some material on how to get better at things. Maybe you need help in a certain process. Maybe you're going to find someone who can help you with something when you know what you're trying to get better at already. Could be a therapist, a clergyman, a guru, anybody who teaches a technique of self-improvement, like perhaps a chess teacher, right? Now, how do you know if that person can teach you? Very, very hard. How can you judge if a psychotherapist is effective or just a charlatan? Because it's going to not be your area of expertise, right? Look, so sometimes you get somebody, ELO ratings actually make it easier to think about and understand some of these questions, right? So let's say you're 600. How are you supposed to know what you're supposed to work on to get better at chess? Or how are you even supposed to know which coach is going to be able to help you get better at chess? It can be very hard to estimate that. There are some ways to guess at it though, right, Aram? Like, you could talk to their past students, people who've worked with them in the past, and get a sense of like what trajectory those people have had. Again, it's like easier if they're chess players than if they're people in therapy or in less measurable areas of life, right? A lot of areas of life it's hard to measure. That's like a problem, and that's why the Polgar sisters were chess players. Their father wanted to be able to measure their progress in a way that would be less disputable, right? So in chess, you can see, did people's ratings go up and stuff, right? In therapy, someone might say, I'm feeling much better. My life is in a great place. And then you might look at how they're living their life and think, that's not what I would imagine as living better, right? So it's very hard to judge the results, even if you talk to past patients, I guess, yeah. Yeah, very interesting question. How are you competent to judge which authority you choose to put some faith in? Yeah, very hard to decide. But there are some ways to do it, Aram, right? It's not like 100% impossible. There are some questions you can ask. You can try a couple people. You can see who's a fit for you. You can talk to some people who've been through somebody else's process or system. You can get some kind of sense of it. Yeah, I mean, I could use chess examples, but they're relatively easier than other examples because of the ELO system. But, asking people how much they enjoyed the process is another piece of it, because to me it's very important that people have a good relationship to chess as opposed to just their rating going up. I want them to, enjoy chess and be quote-unquote good chess people, the kind of people who don't say nasty things to their opponents and stuff like that. No, Sean. Generally, chess teachers learn to be teachers just from the example of other chess teachers or other teachers they've had in their lives. They don't normally go to any kind of teaching training school. And so you'll get a variety. You'll get people who are very, very suited to being teachers and happen to play chess. And then you'll get people who are not very suited to being teachers, but they played chess and not quite good enough to make a living off of chess. So then they started teaching chess. And they may be not particularly good at teaching it, for sure. You get a range like that. Thibeldorf, how do you decide your first rating? Basically, you start out with sort of a provisional rating based on your first wins and losses. You get a rating based on your opponent's ratings. So, like if you won 2 games and lost 2 games against players rated 1400, you'd start out with a rating around 1400. But if you lost 3 games and won 1, you'd start out with a rating around 1200, etc., etc. They sort of plus 400, minus 400, depending on wins and losses, and then averaging those numbers together. That can be used to get a performance rating for a period of time. Like if you play 10 games, you can check out what your performance rating was over those 10 games by averaging in all your opponent's ratings and plus 400 for every win and minus 400 for every loss, plus 0 for every draw, right? And that same method is used on your first 10, 20 games, usually to establish a first provisional rating. Most favorite moment in my chess career? Hard to say. So many great ones. But pretty much my favorite moments are just the individual games that were the best and the most satisfying to me. So if you watch this video that recently came out about top 10 games of David, it's on our Chess Dojo channel on YouTube. It's just a week or 2 old. That video encapsulates basically the top 10, 15 moments of my own chess career. Yeah. So it's just like the games which were the most aesthetically and intellectually interesting and rewarding for me. Sure, Philip. Yeah, glad you enjoyed the Carl course. Since we don't yet have a move trainer on Chess Dojo, go ahead and do that for yourself. And if you know other people who want to study it, point them to our site. It's only $15. All right. The tournament starts in 2 minutes. So I will answer even more of these great questions in a moment in between the commentary. But let's just remind people of how to join our tournament real quick, right? Here are links to the arenas. If you're over on YouTube, there's this Chess Dojo group. And from here, someone can find the links to these arenas. Let me just see if we've got enough players here. 13 to 1700, which I was on, has enough players, which is great. So that tournament is holding. The 1700 plus arena is holding as well. We've got a FIDE master in there and a dozen players waiting to get started. Some of them are of the wrong rating, but most of them are in the correct section. And then, wow, that's huge, that group. And let's see if under 1300 has got enough players. No. Okay, so if anyone wants to play the under 1300 section, you're going to have to join really soon. There's 30 seconds left, and they need 2 more players. And that is this link here. Send it out on both settings. Get that going. Grab some water. And so now we're going to be getting down to business. A small announcement for everybody playing the tournament. Mute the stream or close the stream while you're playing. And then, between games or when you're done with games, come on back. And we will chat between games. All right. So under 1,300 has been canceled. That means if you're under 1,300, you should join the 1,300 to 1,700 group to be able to play. All right. Anyone under 1,300, you are now welcome in the 1,300 to 1,700 group. We'll call that under 1,700 now. I'll fix that command just to make it clear. We're going to call it under 1,700 today. Oh, and I want to change one other thing about it. Next Sunday is Mother's Day. Saturday, May 10th, because of Mother's Day on the 11th. All right. So, is that clear enough, friends? Next week's weekend tournament is going to be on Saturday instead of Sunday, 6 days from now instead of 7 days from now, because 7 days from now is Mother's Day. All right. So, why do we use 15 plus 5 and not 15 plus 10? 15 plus 10 takes a bit longer. We've just been using 15 plus 5 for 4 or 5 years at this point. Is this a Berlin Rui Lopez? Yes, it is. I feel like the very last Nordovik game I watched was also this opening. Nordovik was white. Seemed to be getting into trouble. His opponent somehow, I think, played knight f5 and won the pawn on d4. And then Nordovik found an amazing tactic and won the game. It might be more standard, yeah. It comes from a time, Gabriel, when we ran these tournaments as Swisses instead of arenas. So we were running like a 4-round Swiss, which means before your next game would start, you would have to wait for everybody else's games to finish, right? And we had enough people that you would have somewhere in the tournament some game going on and on and on in a really long end game. And everyone would be waiting forever. And when I say forever, no, it wouldn't be like 2 minutes, It would be a lot more than 2 minutes. 2 minutes would be like 6 moves. And, we'd have one game where somebody didn't know how to checkmate with king and rook against king. So we'd get an extra 50 moves till it was drawn by the 50 move rule or something like that. And there was always at least one game that was doing that. And it's to a point where a lot of people are spending half or more of their time waiting, because if you finish your game in 5 minutes and then the round lasts 45 minutes, because some people do play quickly. And even if you're playing reasonably, your game might take 20 minutes and then someone else is playing for 45 minutes. So that's a reason to keep the increment as minimal as possible, to have regular round times approximately, so people know the rounds are going to be approximately 35 minutes apart with 15 plus 5. But I wanted a little bit of an increment on there so that somebody who's got, king and queen against king is allowed to, deliver the checkmate at the end. Because we also, we're trying to pick a format that's going to work for players who are rated 200 and 2300, right? And there are a lot of players rated 200. They need a few seconds just to execute a move. They're very new to using an online format or whatever. And for them, 5 seconds is like 1 second for a 2300, right? In terms of their ability to just get a move played on the board and not flag. And we actually do see people still flagging even with the 5 second increment, but 5 was kind of the most we could do without the round times exploding. It's some kind of a middle ground. Bonghead asked, is it just me who can't visualize the board? We've got a video coming out any day now, Bonghead, on the topic of visualization and aphantasia in chess. I'm not the only chess player who can't, or not the only master who can't visualize the board. There are a lot of masters who can visualize the board and, some number who can't. Arsenal fan Richie was saying that some people absorb best in sort of a one-on-one setting. Yeah. Oh, they're talking about teaching styles in the US, yeah. Cool. You won't lose billions of points, Saruman Jack. Just play chess and you'll be okay. Okay. Let's get into the games. Let's see what's going on. Aphantasia Stamen USA is basically lacking a mind's eye. I think playing casual blitz between rounds in an OTB tournament, Gabriel, maybe like just mildly hurts. But it depends on the player. All right. 316 versus Y. Suleiman. King's Indian defense. Bishop G5. For anyone who doesn't know, White's got a space advantage because of this pawn on D5, right? So that's giving White a nice little space advantage. It means the black pieces are slightly more cramped than the white pieces. And what black needs most of all in this position is a little bit more space. And the place to get that little more space is over here because this pawn chain points this way. Let's just look at these 3 pawns for a second. The strongest pawn is the one on E5. It takes the most space and it's the best defended. And its defender on D6 is more reliable because it itself is defended by the pawn on C7. Looking at these 3 pawns again, the weakest pawn is the one on C7. It takes up the least space and it's not defended by any of its buddies. So if black tries to play in this area of the board here, that's where black is the weakest. And there are exceptions to this. There are times when you should play in that area. But it's where black tends to be the weakest, so it's not the first place to look as black to try and gain more space or fight against white. This is where you've got the most space. This is where you're the best defended, and so you try to add to it with the F pawn. And so in this pawn structure here, the number 1 plan for black is F7 to F5. Now, if this bishop is bothering us, we might kick it with F6 or H6 first, and then bring the pawn to F5. But you'll see that Y. Suleiman thought for a while here, and instead of trying to bring out a new piece, right, development, Suleiman focused on what needs to happen here, which is gaining more space. It's hard to balance competing things that you should do and that you want to do in chess, right? In this position, black would be right to want to improve their development. They'd also be right to want to gain more space. So how do you know which one you need to prioritize, right? How do you choose between bishop D7, which simply improves your coordination and development a little bit, versus moving this knight a second time in order to gain more space, right? And that partly comes down to how effective is the development you can do right now, right? Like, does bishop d7 improve your coordination very much? And how effective and how possible is the space gaining move, right? Like, when you try f5, is it going to sort of come back to bite you in the butt, as we say, because you won't have enough development to support the move? Or is it going to gain you space so that you'll be able to then develop your pieces to better squares based on the space that you gain? So that's the kind of question you have to ask. It's always a bit tricky, but to me, one of the most interesting things in chess is sort of trying to determine which of different competing goals takes priority at any given moment. That's what turns chess into a clash of ideas for me and makes it super cool, fun, and interesting. So in this position, bishop d7 leaves black a little bit better poised to react to what happens by opening up the queens and rooks communication a little bit. But it doesn't put the bishop itself on a better square where it attacks anything extra, right? And I would have played like Suleiman here. I would have played knight h5, liberating the f-pawn in order to develop more possibilities for my pieces by grabbing more space. So 100% approve in this case here. And white's thinking quite a while here about what to do. Do they want their king on the king side or the queen side is one of the big questions white's facing. If you put your king on the king side, then when black expands here, they're going to have chances to attack your king. If you castle queen side, then your king is in a weirder area where you've already moved a lot of your pawns, but you're also sort of stronger, so it's harder for them to attack you there. If you castle queen side and they play f5, sometimes you can play f4 and try and explode the king side because their king's there. So this is a very, very key moment for white. And I'm going to look at this question here before we talk about what we think white should do, but you could all ask yourselves that before I give you my answer. Dibbeldorf, I couldn't understand how it would benefit me to subscribe. I can see names of books to study for free. Can you tell me more about benefits, please? Thanks. Yeah, Dibbeldorf. So I don't know exactly what the free members can and can't see right now, right? So I don't know exactly what you're missing compared to what the paying members can see. But if I go to chessdojo.club/profile, the number one thing that I have access to is this training plan. And the training plan gives me a list of tasks to do. And I imagine the free, sorry, you can't see the whole thing. I imagine the free tier, you don't see all of the tasks. I imagine that there's stuff that you don't see that's missing, right? So it tells me, it gives me some books to read, which you can find anyway. We've got our book recommendation list available free, as you said. But it's also going to tell me, here are some positions that I should practice. So it's going to give me some middle game positions that I should practice if I open these up, right? This is going to be a Karpov-Spassky position. I'm supposed to play this with black and white against somebody a certain number of times. There's going to be a few of those. Then there's going to be a game that I'm asked to memorize. There's going to be a set of games that I'm supposed to study. At my level, it's going to be 45 games played by Vishy Anand, right? At a lower level, someone might have 10 games from Paul Morphy, let's say, if they're at like a 900 level. If they're at a 1500 level, they're going to have like 20 games of Alyekhin's, world champion Alexander Alyekhin from 1920s, 1930s. So you're going to have different things in these different categories: middle games, end games, openings, tactics, and it's going to tell you all the work that you would need to do to go up 100 rating points. That is the original crux of the website, was this training program. Now, there are a bunch of tools that have been added over time as well. You can click on a scoreboard. You can see how you're doing compared to other people in your group, right? You can see how many how many points you have, what your rating is and progress. You can scroll over here and see which work you've done or haven't done, what's checked off, etc. And yeah, there's more and more stuff on here. I mean, we've got a database where you can store all your games. Actually, let me go to files as a better way. We've like rewritten chess database software on the cloud here where you can store all your games. You can store your opening analyses as well, right? So I've got my games that I've already analyzed. I've got my very best games. I've got material for a book over here. But if I go to E4 or D4, then you're going to find opening analysis, right? So we could go to the Carl Khan, and we're going to have a couple files on the advanced variation. We're going to go to the two knights. We're going to find a bunch of analysis stored about the two knights variation, then model grandmaster games that I've annotated in this opening. So you can store all kinds of chess material on here. These are tools that currently we give access for free to anybody in the training program, but eventually they're going to be sold separately. So there will be the training program and then the tools, and that is coming eventually as we build more and more tools. You've also got like a dashboard here where you can see your ratings, both online ratings and OTB ratings like FIDE and USCF, but also we've got a tactics rating for you where we calculate how good or bad your tactics are based on having you do some tests or some Polgar mates, puzzle rush at different levels comes into it. And over time, we're going to add more ratings here for you, like your strategy rating, your endgame rating, your opening rating, etc. So you get a better sense of what your strengths and weaknesses are. There's a million things. Enough that I can't tell you everything in a reasonable amount of time, right? But that gives you a quick flavor. You can also look at other people's games. They can look at your games. You can exchange comments on each other's games, etc. Hi, Dr. Iran. Welcome. Now, let's talk for a second about what white should have done after knight h5 in answer to my question, should white castle kingside or queenside? It feels to me like if white castles kingside here, black's going to play f5 pretty comfortably, and the white king will be under some risk. If I castle queenside, then black might quickly switch to c6. So I think what I would do is actually what 3-1-6 did, if that makes sense. 3-1-6 waited a moment. They played a move that makes it possible to castle kingside or queenside and improves their coordination. Depending on what happens on the king side, I might choose to castle queenside. If nothing happens on the king side, then I might be closer to playing, b4 and c5. So, black immediately took action. But let's say black had played a waiting move as well, like this, or let's say bishop d7, very plausible waiting move. So they don't yet commit to any action here. As white, I might then play b4. My point is, if black keeps playing slow moves like king h8, etc., I'm achieving my goal on the queen side. And then, yes, I will castle kingside. If black plays a5 to take advantage of the rook or something, then again, I will castle. And the fight is started on the queen side, right? But if now black goes like f5 here, I might still be able to just castle queenside away from it. So there's also a suggestion of f3 that Renga made. Yeah, so that would be another potential move right here where I was saying queen d2, bishop d7. I played b4. You could also play this move f3 first, solidifying this, giving the bishop more places to go, but not yet showing where you're going with your king. And black's a little bit nervous because they want to gain space with f5 or c6, but whichever move they play is going to give white more information about where to castle. Okay, anyway, complicated thought, but here we go. Tim, are you asking how to join the tournament here? Would you like to play with folks today? Because we've just gotten started. There's still a couple hours to go. You would have to join the group on chess.com, and then you can join the tournaments. Because that's how the tournaments are paired through chess.com. They're paired through the club. So why Suleiman kicks this bishop so that the knight and queen will be able to move more easily, and f5 will come next. This makes a lot of sense. And 3-1-6 plays here, weakening black's king. So that makes black less desirous to advance these pawns. But this bishop was also buried in here. So this bishop trade normally helps black. Suleiman plays f5 anyway, perhaps with the idea of f4. And now white is thinking, getting really low on time. Personally, for white, I would have expected bishop e3, keeping this valuable bishop, and then against f5, maybe f4. And now you might argue as white that black played f5 too soon. We're going to be able to castle queenside, and the black king will be a little bit open. But it's not the end of the world for black either. There's 2 pawns here for the king to hide behind, and the fight is starting in the strongest area for black. So, you know, they've got their full chances as well. I mean, I think it's good play from both sides so far. I feel like the dark square bishop trade should help black a bit. Yeah, Stamen says black should always also consider just making sure that trade happens and then playing from here. Definitely possible. Because after f5, if white wanted to, they could keep their bishop still. So you could definitely think about bishop takes bishop there. Oh, look at that. White chooses to keep the bishop now. So this would be exactly a reason why black would have maybe wanted to trade it. But they can play f4 now and h6 and try and surround the bishop and force the trade. We'll see. Yeah, as Rangao says, a lot of people have been traumatized by a queen on h6. Then h4, h5, and some kind of checkmate on the h-file. But we do have to consider it, because here white doesn't seem to have a way to play h4, h5, right? So it becomes totally possible. Now, my prediction here is that 3-1-6 is not going to have enough time to play the middle game very well here. 14 minutes has been spent on 12 moves in the opening, and less than 1 minute remains to play the entire middle game and endgame, should there be an endgame. I would guess that 3-1-6 would make some kind of tactical mistake in the middle game. So the odds of an endgame are lower. Now, black has lots of time, but of course that doesn't mean that they can't make a mistake. We can make mistakes with or without time. But I think we're going to get decisive action in this middle game pretty soon. To me, it's really clear, by the way, this next move, that black should gain space. I'm not an expert on this opening, and there have been a lot of things this game that I wasn't sure about. Right, when I asked you if black should trade the bishop here, or when Stamen asked us if black should trade the bishop here, I didn't know. When I asked if white should castle kingside or queenside here, I didn't know. You know, lots of things I don't know about this position, but I do feel really confident that f4 is correct here. Because, first of all, black doesn't have pressure on e4 to force white to trade, right? White's got that square covered twice, and black doesn't have the pieces set up to really pressure e4. Then there's this bishop, which is annoying us and tying us down, and I think we want to cut it off and force white to probably trade it, right? because it is a good bishop. White can end up with weak dark squares in this opening. And black's bishop's not very good, so I want to force this trade, I think. Also, if white castle's kingside, I'll be happy I took the space. And if white castle's queenside, I'll be happy I didn't give white time to play f4 and blow open my kingside. So I think no matter what, I probably want to grab this space. That's my feeling. Right, Thibodeau has a pretty good idea for white to at some point move this knight to g3, challenge this knight. If black takes, white will get the open h file, which will be good for white. If white takes on h5, it'll hurt the structure of the black king. So knight g3 is like a very good idea for white. And maybe last move, instead of bishop g5, it was an option, right? Knight g3 here. Definitely an interesting option. I think Thibodeau, there's a chance that against this move, black would have played this very interesting move, which is complicated. Attacking g2, d3, breaking up the bishop and queen, threatening that bishop. And then white has to take the knight or the bishop. Either way, it's pretty complicated and interesting. Let's follow the game. Black does play f4 after 3.5 minutes. Very good. White plays f3. Now the dark squares are super weak. And an interesting move for black here is bishop f6. The f3 move for white prepares to deal with h6 like this. You keep your great bishop, you tuck it in here, and you cover your weaknesses. Therefore, bishop f6 cuts off that bishop's retreat and really emphasizes that there are weak dark squares, right? h6 was played, though, so white's going to get to follow their plan and retreat that bishop around. Greetings, Maestro. I also hope white doesn't time out. I always hate watching people flag. Including myself. I hate watching myself flag. You see how much space black has built, right? Plans advancing nicely for black. Often now you would also play g4. Or knight f6, h5, g4. But you also have more room to sort out your pieces now, right? Knight g6 could improve the knight. Queen e7, bishop d7. You've got room to develop better now. So maybe now we should develop some of the pieces to better squares before we keep pushing. But I do hope folks notice this interesting suggestion I had of bishop f6, keeping that bishop from getting away. It's a much superior bishop. So this move's very, very important. Would make a big, big difference. Yeah, as black, I would say I've gained a bunch of space. Time to improve my pieces a bit. By the way, if black played bishop f6, I preferred black's position. Having not played bishop f6, even though black achieved all this, and white moved this bishop like 6 times, basically to no avail, I think white's position is still pretty decent here. Because they ended up keeping the bishop, and they can just play c5, and it should be a pretty fair game for both sides. g4, and the knight retreats quickly. Black Should have strongly considered pawn takes g3, I think. They've got 3.5 minutes, but they just go back, locking the entire king side. h3. So now black can't break through on the king side. White might even tuck their king on that side of the board. I guess ultimately there's h5, hg, and then a piece sacrifice. Yeah. Good morning, Mahogi. And raise the curve. Knight h4 targeting this pawn. So it's between knight g1 and trading that piece, right? Gets traded. So now white's dark squares are super bad, but black's pawn structure has lost a lot of its dynamism. White castle's far away. That king side was pretty locked though, so it was possible to actually tuck the king over here. Now, is this not a great square for that knight? Attacking f3 and h3 in perpetuity? That seems like a really annoying maneuver from white's side. Yeah, Musky Manatee, these are their ELOs. So Y Suleiman is 1058, 316 is 1668. These are chess.com rapid ratings. Look at that knight go! It hits the spot on g5. And now it's tying down 2 rooks. Just one knight tying down 2 rooks. Oh, that knight must feel like a boss. Not that bosses are good, folks. Not that bosses are good. Down with the bosses. But that knight is having a moment, you know? That knight is having a moment. 316 has not yet flagged nor blundered anything tactically, so that's good. But white doesn't have much of a plan here yet, and there's still a long game to go. I guess the good news for white is that black is now getting close to being low on time, and so we might just have a toss-up where anybody's, where we get maybe many blunders from everybody. I feel like with that knight, black's better. Yeah, that's a good point. Maestro says this knight should just go to g1. Cover both those pawns and free 2 rooks. Free the rooks. You know, why did white even move any of these rooks over here, right? They should have just started with knight g1, seeing that this knight g5 was coming, and then brought this rook out of there. Okay, so eventually white can do that, and that'll make the position more equal-ish. White threatens queen h4. Interesting idea. Yeah, the queen could be very good on f2, actually, if it forces the knight to retreat at some point. Maestro's over on the YouTube, Hockey Chess Dude. I don't know if it's Chess Maestro. It's just Maestro. Might not be our old buddy. I don't know. Knight h7. Queen tucks herself on f2. 20 seconds each. Everything to play for still. Oh my goodness. It is. Maestro is Maestro. Evening Skibix. It may look like we're watching Bullet. You might think, what's going on? Why are these guys watching Bullet today? Actually, it might be a draw now that the whole queenside got locked, huh, folks? There's not really any pawn breaks for white or black. I think the game is now drawn by 50 move rule eventually. Crazy. Oh, Maestro, we've got Stan as well in Twitch saying hi to you. Yes, Damon. Black definitely should have considered c6 if they thought they had the advantage. The way things are going, this should be a draw eventually, right? I mean, nobody can do nothing. You know, Mahogi, it seems like almost everybody is the guy in that Chess Dojo rap, you know? It seemed like that one touched more than a few nerves. All right, white does the knight maneuver to g2. Black is ready, defends it with the bishop. That should be the end of that excitement. That was the only part you were missing. But now you have to not listen to what he says, right? That'll be the last piece you need. A GM coach that he don't listen to. So you have to just not listen to what he says. A GM coach that he don't listen to, and if you think it is, then yes, my friend, yes, that is you. But that all changed on one bright sunny day when a friend said, "Hey, don't you know? Welcome to the dojo." Yeah, basically the 4 rooks in this position do nothing. The light squared bishops do nothing. They can only attack a couple of each other's pawns with knights. Oh, black really walked into that. White telegraphed, right? I'm going to sack this. And black moves the knight to block in the bishop, to block in the rook, to block into the rook. And we might be in for some action, folks. Nobody expected g5, huh? Nobody expected any action in this game. That knight went the wrong way. So, I mean, if you're black and you're 600 points lower rated and you've got 20 seconds, play bishop g5. Don't let them play g5. There's nothing anybody can do here. But if you're trying to give us a show, those of us watching, then by all means, do it like this. The players don't seem to realize that queen h4 is possible, and black should move the king off of the g file at some point. Oh, comes off of the g file. Oh my god. You know, white's probably winning, by the way, with this rook sack, and then queen h4, and then rook g5, and just these 2 pieces are going to mate the king because everybody else is trapped over here. I would guess that white's winning with that. And if not that, then at least, you know, take the pawn on h4, right? Black just keeps leaving the king on the g file. Get your king out! That rook is looking at your king. Oh my god, black sacks their everything, their face. White doesn't take on c6. Why doesn't white take on c6? The amount of action in this game is way more than I expected. Way more. Oh my god, they're both losing at the same time, white and black. I don't even know. Of course, they're playing bullet, basically, at this point. A really long game of bullet. 5 seconds a move for like 10 minutes. Passed A pawn moves down the board, gets blockaded. Black's main hope is to go after this king, so queen d8 to a5 to come in somewhere would be my main idea. But for now, black overprotects the passed pawn, which also makes sense. The knight keeps the queen at bay. Bishop d8, sure. Bishop b1, Kavutskiy, and we get another trade. Now his g-pawn is totally hanging. Bring the king! At some point, white's going to take on g5 and checkmate you, my friend. Black sends the queen. Bishop takes b5, pawn takes b5, rook b5. Probably threatened, but probably won't be played. Oh, there's the threat to the g-pawn. We going to lose right here? Going to lose in one move now, black? Yep. Doesn't find queen d8 to defend it. White breaks through on the g-file. King tries to chase out the rook. Rook goes here. Queen g8 to g3 might be playable here. But black has found the king and will move nothing but the king. Nothing but the king! Trying to trap the rook with a king. Do you guys see that king go? Look at this guy. Yeah. That king is getting his exercise in, his miles in today, right? Now, if white brings the queen over here, it's going to be bad news for that king. He's not going to outrun a rook and a queen. Oh, groan. Check. Mate. Down goes the king. Wow. That was a lot packed into one game. Holy moly. These rapid tournaments are violent affairs, huh? Violent affairs. Madness. Absolute madness, folks. Well, get in the habit of protecting your stuff. What can I say? Get in the habit of protecting your stuff. Get this king off of the damn only file that's open for white, right? Bring him up somewhere here where he helps protect these pawns so that white can't come through your pawn structure. Yeah, in some position like this, Stamen, surely it was possible to just go like this, right? And then you got queen b4, c4, just rage on this poor king. People underestimate how weak the kings are in these kind of positions. Everything's locked up, but if you make some kind of piece sacrifice and open it up, either king is just very, very weak because there's no normal castled positions anywhere on the board. Wow. Lots of lessons, but we just got to keep trucking. We've got other games to check out. So let's go to the 1700 plus group and see what the professionals are up to. So, games. Let's click on a few and then pick one that we like. We've got a Queen's Gambit here. White playing very piano with that bishop pair. We've got King Chess against CC Slammer. And this game's pretty far along. White's king looks very uncomfortable. Black seems to be threatening something like Queen b1, King e2, Rook e8. So Rook f5 wouldn't help. Black would just continue with that plan. Queen b or c1. Queen c1, I guess, and then Rook e8. Queen c1's even better than b1 because she accesses some other squares. Oof. Do I have any general advice for OTB rapid tournaments? Right, you've got a lot of experience playing Blitz and Classical and not really playing OTB rapid. I mean, I would play some of these Chess Dojo rapid tournaments on the weekends because at least you are getting a sense for the time control, how much to think, how much not to think. You need to have, I would say, Skibix, you need to be able to put into words your time management plan. You see what I mean? Like, you have to have an idea in mind. This is how long I do or don't want to be thinking. This is how much time I'm planning to spend on important decisions. This is how much I'm supposed to spend on unimportant decisions. This is how much time I should have after the opening. Like, you need to be able to say, it's such an important part of it, right? Is going to be your time management. And it's going to be time management that you're not as comfortable or experienced with, right? So you need to have a plan for it. White tries to shelter against Rook e8. King comes up.
Why don't you include him in a game? Why don't you include him in a game?
Maybe here to threaten Queen d1 is a way to keep chasing this king more. The position should be winning for black, probably. Hey. We've got a little situation here at home, folks, so I'm going to go on a short break and hopefully be back in about 2 minutes. Hey, Max Plays Chess, thank you. Very kind of you. I am doing fine. So, yes, we'll just leave this game playing here, and I'll be back soon.
black.
All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Chess Dojo's weekend rapid tournaments for viewers. Anybody who's not playing, you're welcome to play if you want to. You're also not obliged to play if you don't want to. You're welcome to just hang out with us and talk it through. See what's going on. We've got a new game here starting between 316 and Jazz Mataz. Who won that last game that I had running? I saw the Queen's trade, which meant the black was not winning so easily. It's not showing here. Not showing. We've got a lot of people playing here today. Yeah, very, very big tournaments. White managed to win that endgame down a pawn blobiciously? That's crazy. That's crazy. Shows how important it is to know what your advantages are, because black was up a pawn, but the biggest advantage was that the white king was really dead, and black should have somehow gone after that king. Instead, they traded queens, and then I guess there was room for white to make a comeback in the endgame. Bishop g5 from white. Yeah, that's a slightly awkward move for black, who doesn't really want to trade bishops, doesn't really want to put the queen here, blocking these pieces. Nice move from white. Yeah. But we have already seen a game of 3-1-6s, right? So we should maybe, if we can, spread the love around a little bit and look at a game of somebody who hasn't had one of their games viewed today. So there's something for everybody. Well, there's enough people today, we won't get everybody. But so there's something for everybody in the VOD, right? So let's check on Min's XYY and Entum, perhaps? How did Drew do in his first game? Nordvik drew that first game in the Rui. In the Rui Lopez. All right. I'm going to blaze through the first 10 moves so you can see how the players got this position. Here is a King's Indian defense. And white fianchettos the bishop for extra stuff around the king to protect it against kingside attacks. And then only a little bit later takes over the center. Black tries to counter with c5. And normally in response to this move, I play d5. But if we switch to a Benoni structure here, bishop g2 is one of my least favorite lines for white in the Benoni. I don't love the bishop on g2 in the Benoni. And black's already played e6, so the d-pawn's a little bit weak on the d-file. So my typical proclivity is to grab space with d5 and push past my opponent's c5 or e5 moves. But in this position, I think I might hold still, just as Entum did. Entum just keeps developing the pieces. Yeah. And now, lashing out is Minsky. With a basically, I think, a pawn sack offer here, right? No, Minsky, it is not okay to listen to the stream while playing the game. This video will be saved. You can stay for a second because I'm going to explain to you. This video will be saved, right? And so when your game is done, you can always go back and watch a recording of what I said about your game and compare that with what you were thinking about during the game. Maybe pick up, that's the idea, is that you'll be able to pick up one or two interesting thoughts from what we were saying about your game. But during the game, you should definitely mute the stream, not listen to it, or close the stream. And yeah, it's not even whether or not it would be an unfair advantage. It might be. It's also just sort of a distraction. Like, you should really be focused on what you're doing when you're doing it. Couldn't play rook d8 because of queen g4 check, and then I blundered. Oh, I think I know which game it is. So, couldn't play rook there because of queen g4 check, and queen takes the bishop on g3. Right, and if queen d1, king e3, and there's no chase down, and if rook back to e8 after the queen goes to g3, king to f2, and there's no way to finish it off either. And if queen c2, king f1, rook d1, knight e1. Okay, yeah, I think I see what you mean, Cameron. Yeah, I think you're right. Queen g4 takes g3 seems to just barely win. So the position was pretty tricky there. The bishop was on g3, queen e4, your rook was on f8. So if queen g4 was really a threat, maybe king to b8 would have been a good move in that position. Somewhere around there you played queen f4 and traded queens, right? And that couldn't have been quite right. Muskie's just making a joke, hockey chess, dude. Is YOLO chess still fun if you don't understand any openings? I'm not sure what YOLO chess is, Starks, but chess itself is fun without openings, sure. Yeah. Perfect, Mincy. See you later. Hope to say something that'll be of use to you. So let's have a look at this. Entom trades once, trades twice, knight captures. And now if white takes on b5, it almost looks like it's too late because black can take on e4, defending d6. Huh. Was there a clear reason not to take this? I don't see it. I think white could have taken the pawn. There's another very exciting move for white here, e5. Trying to use the bishop and rook being on the same diagonal to white's advantage. And e5, if black takes, then after knight e5, it looks very bad for black. So I think against e5, there's a good chance that black would play something like b4, and then you have to calculate this kind of variation. You know, this stuff is hard to calculate. So this position was super crazy. White spent a minute 40 on it, which is reasonable. I mean, you have to put a little bit of time into it, but you can't think forever either. Takes. Now white grabs it. Black grabs back. Bishop trade. Oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen here? And Minzy is thinking here before recapturing, so they're considering all kinds of options. Finally, the king takes. Now, from here, there's the danger of queen d4, but maybe black has e5 for the moment. There's the bishop talking to the rook. There's this knight sort of dangling. Is it smart for white to trade the dark squared bishops? I think both players just kind of had to trade here. There wasn't any sort of strategy to the decision. This piece was hanging. This piece was here. You know, they just had to go. All right, so white goes knight d2 with maybe the idea of knight takes knight, bishop takes a8. Right, so this needs to be calculate. Weirdly, the knight on d2 is almost more trapped than the bishop on a8 in this position, right? What do we do with this piece? I guess I'd do something like bishop a6 as black if that happened. And then this move here for white looks amazing. Hitting the rook, defending the knight, leaving this piece kind of trapped. Knight d2. Let's see what's happening. d5, right. Defending the piece, blocking the diagonal. This seemed pretty likely to me. Now, white can maybe win one pawn on e4, but maybe not more than that. Yeah. Seems reasonable. Black avoided losing the game there. And they're just giving one pawn. And so we'll still get probably a pretty tense endgame. b4 would have been better. But okay. On which move, Great Love? Are you thinking right here after d takes c5, it would be better for black to play b4 instead of recapturing? Because I wondered about that during the game as well, whether black could throw in this fancy move right here. See where, yeah, it couldn't have been after white took it. Oh, maybe you're thinking b4 here for white, huh? b4 kicking this piece while e4 is defended. Oh, I didn't think of that, but that might have been a very strong move. However, knight a4 will stop white from playing knight b5 by tagging this. So that's not the big deal. All right, you're clarifying. You're saying here, 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 and now b4? In this position? That's a complicated move. Here, here, here maybe? Here, and then you do this, and this knight can't get out. You know, I think actually after b4, black may even have knight f2, as I think about it a little bit more. And then on king f2, knight d3. You can't go back to g1 actually because of queen b6. Oh, now you're saying before knight d2. Okay, sorry. Instead of knight d2. Oh, you're just trying to win a piece off of a straightforward break the connection. That's going to be a little bit easier for us to calculate and see if you're right. So options for black right here. If you move the knight on c5, then rook e4 looks good. If you attack the knight on b5, then pawn takes c5 looks good. Knight f2, king f2 doesn't seem to do much. Oh yeah, that looks like game winning right there. Just b4. Nice spot, Great Love. It's a very chaotic position. So many different moves to look at. So it's the kind of position where either or both players can easily overlook a little move like this, as can us, the viewers, we the viewers, as can we the viewers. Queen c2. Getting fancy. White's not satisfied with the endgame here. And that gives black time to maybe defend this pawn. I mean, it gives black all kinds of moves, you know, like from queen d3 to bishop b7 to bishop a6, all kinds of moves. Yeah, blobiciously, I think also b4, queen b6 wouldn't have been good enough here, basically, because what white's going to want to do is take here, and then you take the knight, and they take this, and it's a 2-for-1, right? And basically, because this knight's hanging when you take this one, it's the same thing for bishop d7, bishop a6, queen b6, any of those moves. White should be able to take on c5, and then if black takes the knight, white will still be ahead one because then this thing's hanging at the end. It works out very nicely for white. Okay, well, I'll just say here, I would say 100% white should go for the endgame. I'm pretty convinced it would be hard to do better than that. There's some chance that you could play rook e4 and wait a move on the queen trade. But I'll just say, from a practical standpoint, queen d4 is the right move here. But from a practical standpoint, if you ever got into some middle game like this, I would feel like it's somewhat scary for this king, and I would rather have taken the queens off. But rook e4 might be good if we can always answer queen b6 with queen d4, right? If black has no good move to avoid the queen trade here, then it might be fine to start with rook e4. But I think it's very, very dubious to not take the pawn back at this point, right? With this fancy move, and I know white thinks they're threatening knight c7, but this fancy move, I can easily see things going wrong somehow. Black played bishop a6, attacking the knight. It goes into c7, rook c8, queen b2, huh? What if white was right about this whole queen c2? Knight c7, rook c8, queen b2. That would be incredible if white calculated that black had no way to deal with this despite the rook c8 option. I mean...
Thank you for fostering a positive community and providing a great program and wonderful community.
Aww. It's our pleasure, JDW, and thank you. That's very, very kind of you as well. Thank you for fostering everything we're trying to do here. Yeah, right on. So queen c2, seeing that there's going to be rook c8, that's an incredible calculation for someone in the 1600s to have taken that into account in a rapid game and calculated ahead like that. And it feels like it is actually going to be correct, you know, bishop on b7, same as bishop on a6, right? You're going to check your way out and grab an exchange. Wow. I think we just have to take our hats off to Entom there, right? One has to understand that sometimes you can't offer any suggestions or any improvements or anything of that sort, right? Any new ideas for someone to think about. Sometimes you just have to be like, wow, that was nice. That was really nice. Whew. No trace. I don't think it only turned out good because black played a bad move. I think black had no way to refute this queen c2 move, actually, which looked really wrong to me. But, you know, queen d3, queen takes, pawn takes, nice pass pawn, but after knight c7, right, we have to give an exchange. Now, black could play a move like rook here to get out of knight c7 in the sense of, like, losing material, right? But then we get something like this, you know, and, you know, white's got a good position. They're winning the pawn back. They've made no concessions, no problems. They're still getting this pawn. Yeah. Rook e7 instead, maybe? Sure. Yeah, black doesn't have to lose the exchange, right? They could accept that this is a real threat, knight c7, and play a move so they don't lose to knight c7, but white still gets enough time to win back the pawn. I think against rook e7, the plan might have been to take with the queen instead of the rook. Perhaps still with throwing in rook d1 first, I'm not sure, but maybe queen e4 here would be the plan. And then against bishop here, you go queen e5 or queen d4, something like that. So, Tim says... Oh, Tim and Tim. We got two Tims. They could have had the pawn at the start, yeah. The Tims are saying that you don't even need queen b2 because knight e8 is always with check. So true. So true. Well spotted. Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's slightly better. It's just White's calculation was actually accurate, Trace, right? That they were not giving Black a chance to hold the pawn. I'm just impressed that they did something that complicated and didn't fall on their face. Normally, when people get too fancy, they're blundering something. That was, that was my slightly rude assumption of what was going to happen when I saw Queen C2. If you hear what I mean, right? When I see Queen C2, a lot of what an experienced chess player has is instinct, right? And alarms that go off. And the alarms are not always right, but they like point us in certain directions, right? So when I saw Queen C2, I thought, alarm bell, White's getting too fancy and messing up, and Knight C7 doesn't look like it's really going to be a real threat. But it actually was a real threat, and there was no time for Black to defend the e-pawn. So I just want to give proper credit to Entim for having calculated that accurately, right? Just trying to give some credit. But now you guys want like some super GM level of analysis that I'm not quite providing. Apologies. Blob confirms that they have an instinct to be fancy, never trade, and then blunder, right? So sometimes it's good to just take the pawn, trade the queens, right? When I see that over fancy move, I don't think people shouldn't try to be fancy, by the way. I think you have to try sometimes and learn and get better and so forth. But my instinct there went off like this is not quite going to work, and it did work. So, props there. All right, Opfest played F4, Hockey Chess Dude. So, we got some new openings in the bag. And Foos has an interesting suggestion for Black, that after Queen C2, maybe they could have played E5, Knight C7, Bishop F5. So Foos wants to sack an exchange but hold the E-pawn. Yeah, okay, Foos. Personally, I'd rather be down a pawn than give an exchange here, but White's definitely going to have light square issues for the whole game, so there will be a certain degree of counterplay here. And Black's got a big majority on the king side, so White's king is going to be a source of concern throughout the game. It would still be a tricky game to play, for sure, for both players that way. Nordovic's game sounds crazy. His queen got to my king before my queen could mate his queen. It sounds like Nordovic played a heck of a woke game or something. Madness. Trying to checkmate people's queens. Pawns turning into queens. Promotions. All kinds of identity stuff in Nordovic's game. All right, Bishop B7. Yikes. And this is part of what Foos was pointing out, is that any of these exchange down positions. In fact, that's probably why White put the rook on B4. They saw this coming, and they were planning to give back the exchange. Right? That's why White thought for a while and played rook B4. They spent 4 minutes on this. So they were thinking, if I just back up and then this happens, I'm not happy doing F3? Not obvious to me why White couldn't do that. But they give it back, bring out the rook, simplifying. Another option is you just start pushing, Try to turn that A-pawn into an asset. Is king F1 even okay blobishiously? You mean to basically just, in some position like this, to just run? like this way. Is this okay? I would say it's probably not. It may not immediately be lost, but way, 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 way risky. Black is at least equal, and they might win, but they're definitely not lost here. They can always just go queen f3, just keep chasing you. There's no way that white's better. So at this point, it's better to give back the exchange and push the a pawn than to run our king out into the middle of the board. And if black plays correctly, as you say, you might even lose as white. It could be very scary. All right, Entom takes over the open file, down to 1:20 on the clock against Minzy. And black's got all their chances to hold the game. By the way, like, little detail is that here, there would have been rook a4 for black, right? Yeah. Double Jared is confident that white's winning here. I'm not. Until those pawns get further and tie down the black pieces, it's really unclear to me if white is actually winning this game. Yeah, I need to see I need to see these pawns getting scarier. For now, black's got a lot of room to maneuver these pieces and make threats against white's king. And like if white played queen c7, I don't even know if that would be a winning rook and pawn ending, right? So this is part of the question. I guess I have nowhere normal to put this king, and maybe I would just lose to this kind of a thing. Black plays queen b4. That's kind of what I expected. Avoiding the queen trade. Makes sense. Could have also played rook a7. Yeah, it makes sense probably to avoid the queen trade. I wasn't completely sure the queen trade was winning, though. King comes out. Is this going to be... Is white going to get the first attack here, maybe with rook c4? Black would have to throw in a check and play g5 to make some living space for that king. Wow. Under 30 seconds for white. Minzy with 3 minutes could come in handy if any weird variations come up. And just for keeping your cool, right? Here comes rook c4. So the threat is rook h4, king g5, queen f4, checkmate. So black needs the tempo of the check on e1. They're thinking a little bit, and that's good because you want to keep a cool head and make sure that you use your time and you use your resources here as black. You can afford to consistently play a little bit slower than white. But not too slowly. I mean, you also want to leave them under some pressure, right? So if it's clear that you want to go queen e1, g5, it can be an advantage to play those moves quickly too. Okay, black doesn't go for the check. How surprising. White gives a check. And now, after king here, there's probably like some mating attack ideas. Queen c5, there's queen d5, then f4, queen e3. King comes out. Queen h7 is possible, but I feel like there might be even better here. Queen c5, if f5, then queen e7's mate. So that's kind of nice about that move. This move's very committal because now the rook's trapped. So now you got to finish as white. You basically have to finish with checkmate now. I guess there's the idea of going g4 and check and take the rook, but black might have a perpetual then. White goes for queen c5, and black has queen d5 here. Then there's queen c2, queen e4, g4. King f4, g5, winning the queen. Oh my gosh. 7 seconds for white. Look at this variation, folks. Check here, check, then g4. Pushing the king off of the queen. It can only go here, g5. Can the king also keep going here? Yes, but then there's f5, letting the rook into the game. And that looks like king f3, rook f4. Oh, this looks winning for white. But does white see all that in 7 seconds? Maybe. Queen c5 was already nice to see that move, right? So that's a good start for white. Oh, yeah, they didn't find queen c2, g4. And now we're in this rook ending, which is not winning for white. This great black king can go to e4 and then here. Oh, it doesn't go for glory. Oh. Do you guys see king e4, king f3 for black? Black goes for counterplay with the d pawn. That's not easy for white either. 5 seconds. The endgame's probably a draw. It's certainly not easy for white. Rook b4 with the idea of d3, rook to d4. But black plays king d5, keeping that rook from getting where it wants to go. And now brings the king forward. Nice. d3 also looked super good right there, by the way. Grabs a pawn, but king e3. You don't need the h-pawn. You're like almost winning here as black. Right? Imagine here, king e3 from black. Doesn't that look like the end? You're threatening back rank mate. Oh, they got distracted by that stupid h-pawn. And now they go back and defend their pawns, so the endgame goes back to being a draw. For a moment, black was winning. Just for a moment. If you wanted that pawn, rook g2 was a safer way to go. Now the white king gets back into the game. It chooses not to. King f2 would have definitely saved the game for white. Black wins this pawn, and then they can go here, and then they can go here. White's in a lot of danger in this rook endgame. It looks like they're losing again at this point. g5 mistake! Take the pawn! For free! Now, white's threatening rook f8 check. Black could blunder and lose. No, they hide the king. This endgame is again a draw. It was winning for black for a while, till they traded that g-pawn. Here the only drawing move is rook g8. White was up to 15 seconds. They might find it. They find it! Yes! Good job, Entom. They built up those 15 seconds with a couple quick moves, and then they knew to stop and spend them right on that move there. Bravo. Now this is the Philidor position. If you get to the 3rd rank with this rook. Oh, it looks like there's still some precise moves to play because the rook went behind the pawn, which is correct once the pawn's on d3, but on d4 it's not yet correct. The king can sort of get in front and chase the king out. So we're still going to get some rook endgame theory. This rook goes totally the wrong direction. Stay on the 2nd rank, my friend. Oh, the king runs away! No! Go forward. You're trying to conquer the squares in front of this pawn with your king. Oh! Oh! They've never seen a rook endgame before. I don't blame them. That's just how it is. That's just how it is. Let's see if they've seen a king and pawn endgame before. White can trade, and it's a draw. Does it. All right. Once again, white stops at a key moment, thinks for a little bit, finds that clarity, and draws the endgame. Whew! Incredible. Incredible. We got some really interesting rook and pawn stuff going on there, though we were kind of blitzing by that phase of the game, but yeah. All right, and they draw it. They draw it. Bravo to both players. That was a good one. That was a good one. Whew. All right. Let's keep going. Let's grab us another game. Yeah, by the way, folks, don't expect... We don't expect players of that rating level under pressure to be reciting endgame theory and know those rook endgames cold. It was just interesting to me that a bunch of interesting rook endgame stuff came up, you know? So. Which section are you in, Max? Max_Twitch. All right, I'm looking for you. Man, we've got 30 players in the 1700 plus section today. That's incredible. Wow. Okay, Max Twitch. From Belgium, perhaps. Huh. Max bears a certain resemblance to Hikaru, wouldn't you say? Maybe a distant cousin? Max is a streamer as well. Now, Max, you're asking us to look at a game that you won. Why is that? What do you want to get from this game that you already won? What am I looking for? So far, it seems like correct opening play from white and black. E5 looks like a nice move for black. Bishop G4. I guess black should probably trade on F3 here. Nice, Benedict. Nice! Playing with 2400s OTB. The program is working. For sure. Oh, exciting choice from Max here to go for Queen H7. You did many mistakes according to a computer, and you think I would have played better. Who knows? David hasn't been training much lately, folks. Don't expect too much from him. Knight D4 looks like a nice move from your opponent. Bishop E4 to be able to at least trade, right? On F3 if they go with the check. But if black goes for the F3 pawn, now E5 is hanging. So there's like, rook takes E5 looks very strong for white. Oh, it looks like you're... No, it looks like... Looks good for you, Max. I don't know. Queen H3. Okay, the opponent's threatening rook here now, huh? That's awkward. I wonder if you couldn't take on B7, though, and then move your queen to E4 instead of H3. I mean, I certainly wouldn't play this better than a computer would, so I don't know what I'm here for. Scary, but yeah, F4 is the remedy. They double. Bishop G. I mean, your moves look good to me, Max. There's a chance that here Queen A3 was a good move. I mean, but your Bishop G2 looks good too. I don't know. And what about C3 here? Okay, the most desirable move is just Rook D1. Let's look at that for 1 second. What are we afraid of here? Feels vaguely like you're winning. Like somehow your bishop's better than the knight and the black king is weaker than your king. And you're up a pawn. So it's starting to feel like you're winning. If I just develop the last piece, right? This makes it harder for black to run across this way. I have this queen a3 move, right? So if black goes king f8 to avoid queen a3, then maybe I can take, attacking the queen, and try and take this. And I'm running into rook g5, right? But right now the queen's hanging to a pawn, so maybe rook e5, rook d4, rook g5. And then... oh, the queen's covering d8 at the same time here. Okay. I see some little issue. Maybe I should throw in this check just to avoid rook g5, right? King here and then take. Now it looks like you win a piece, more or less. I don't know. I have a feeling like your position is winning here. But let's see what happens with knight c2. You take. They run, huh? And then you just bring out the other rook. Looks like you're winning. Well, I don't know, Max. Looks like everything you did was pretty good to me. Even this judgment to wreck your pawn structure, it worked out pretty nicely, no? Yeah, all your moves look good to me, Max. I don't know exactly what I'm looking for. It looks like you played a great game. Let's check this knight ending. I was curious about this. So black's got the outside passer. A3 offering the piece sack. But the A pawn would queen, so white has to stop it. Then the knight goes after the G pawn, but white defends that. King comes back out. Normally this kind of endgame's winning, but it's not winning without the A pawn. Ooh. Oh, good question, Maestro. Good question. Yeah, and that fancy long line. Here, 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 right? You're saying, wouldn't there be rook check at the end of this, right? And then, I don't know if I was going to h1 or f1, right? But let's say I go to h1 for the moment or something. And then queen d4. Oh, yeah, I wanted to play rook e8, but I can't. Okay, so let's go bishop g2 here. Okay, so in the bishop g2 position, the queen has access to h3 and the rook has access to e8. So here, black can't win with queen d4 because of rook e8. King here. And queen h3. Well, that's what I thought, but look, there's a counter back rank. I hadn't looked this far before. I hadn't seen queen d1 before. Okay, so, I mean, I definitely want to play bishop g2 here. Queen d4. Wow. That's pretty hilarious, right? Like, I was thinking that black wouldn't be able to take the rook Now I'm pointing with my finger instead of my mouse. I thought black wouldn't be able to take this rook because of white's back rank. But actually it goes both ways. White has the counterattack on the back rank, and then black has the counterattack on the back rank. Yeah, so that doesn't provide any conclusion for Max, but definitely shows that the calculation was... that there were a lot more complications to this calculation than we originally looked at. So this queen a3 thing maybe doesn't even work here. Yeah. So who knows if that was better or worse than what Max did. What Max did seemed to win pretty well. So we were going to grab a new game though, right? This knight ending looks like when black lost the a-pawn, the excitement kind of fell out of the game. I don't think king f8 will work, Jared, because then the bishop on e4 is blocking the rook, so we don't have rook e8. Queen e7 ideas, wow. Okay, so you have calculated a thingy. So we're here, king f1 with the idea of queen d4, queen e7. Threatening this and this. And I guess if rook e5, bishop h7. All right. Good night, Maestro. Hope to see you again soon. Hope all's well with you. Black seems pretty alive and kicking here. Take first, pawn up ending. Great. But a pawn up ending for who? Let's see. We'll discover in a moment. Here, here, here. Woohoo! White gets to do some cleaning up. So white wins with queen e5 and then bishop h7. Nice. So queen e7 threatening this stuff. Yeah. This game, wait, one on time. The knight endgame. Oh, ultimate pain for black. Trying to win this equal knight endgame and finally lost on time. Oof. Oof, oof, oof. All right, let's click on some new games. This one looks wild. What's going on? Opposite colored bishops looks interesting. Let's click on another one just in case. Also looks pretty interesting. Is white down a pawn here? Yeah, like a Catalan that black's doing pretty well, I think. Big fun against CC Slammer. Oh, I think we're going to have to look at this weird one, folks. Unusual pawn structure. Yeah, and Max, thank you for all those gift subs. Much appreciated. Double Jared, do you approve of looking at this unusual pawn structure game? I mean, all those games that I just clicked on looked plausible and interesting. But I think it might be fun to see this unusual pawn structure here. Big fun just playing f4 now to support that knight on e5. I think that we can quickly click through the first 10 moves as long as I don't try to explain too much. And it'll just help us orient ourselves to what's going on here just from having seen it, you know, without... So I'll try not to say anything too much about it. Wow, b5, that's pretty cool. Black grabs some space. White tries to weaken the pawn duo. White grabs more space immediately. They're freestyling here. Black takes a central position. And then white jumps in to grab some kind of weird extra space on the king side here by surprise, you know? Which makes sense also. Unleashes this bishop so that pawn is kind of pin, so to speak, because of this hidden attack. Queen c7 defends the bishop while challenging the knight, and white just supports it. Now, there's a very weak square for white on e3 to watch out for. And a question whether white's going to try and play knight f3 and bring out the bishop this way, or play b3 and put the bishop on the super long diagonal. Big question. Black plays d4 very early. Wow, I thought, I was going to say the other question is if black just plays knight d7 or knight c6 challenging the knight, right? What is white going for? Maybe black thought that that goes too well with knight f3 for white. Sorry. Like here, right? Just bringing the next knight. And white doesn't mind. That's partly solving the tangle of white's pieces for them. So black plays something very dramatic here. d4 very quickly. Makes this into a bit of a weak square and looks to trade this bishop and weaken white's king a little bit with that trade. Now, white has options. One of them is knight f3 anyway, keeping bishops on the board. To me, that's maybe the most obvious option, actually. That's true, Pratik. I'm not really sure why I keep telling him that he can't come on. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not even sure why I always refuse. I guess from one perspective, trading pieces is the most obvious thing to do, but I feel like we need that bishop more than black needs theirs, with some weaknesses around the king. So to me, this is the most obvious option, and yeah, I don't see anything wrong with it either. So I think that makes sense for white, but it makes sense also that white has to deal with this change. Black just changed the structure dramatically in the center, so white wants to think about it a bit. Another idea I had here for white is e4. Grabbing some space, and then if pawn takes e3, I would then play knight f3 with the idea that bishop takes e3 is coming. I think that's a major alternative for white. I'm a little suspicious that I'm probably blundering something with this e4 idea. But those are the two ideas I had. Let's see what white picked. Bishop f3, not on my list. We get the trade, and white opens the e file for themselves with this unusual recapture. Funky. Charlie, do you know about this competition that chess.com runs called like the Blitz Chess Championships or something like that for football players? And if you've heard of it, the follow-up question is, does this guy Matt, does he play in that chess.com competition? You haven't heard of it. Okay. Then I guess you wouldn't know. But I think once a year they run a tournament for NFL players. A chess tournament on chess.com. Fair enough, Blaze. Next week our tournament will be on Saturday instead of Sunday. So maybe next week is your chance, Blaze, to get a bit of a tournament in. So Blitz champs. Yes. Something like that. Matt's goal is to be the strongest NFL chess player. That's a fair goal. I guess it means he'll have to win the that Blitz champs tournament at some point along the way, right? So everybody, next week, our weekend tournament's on Saturday instead of Sunday. You guys know what Sunday is? Sunday is Mother's Day. Say something nice to your mom that day. Or do something nice for some mom somewhere next Sunday. Yeah, Mr. Hockey Chess Dude just calls every sport NHL. Matt can't get invited because he's too strong? Well, then I guess he's already made his goal. They won't even let him beat the other players because he's already too good. Knight FD7. All right, let's see. Queen E2, going to that open file, improving the queen. Actually, this pawn at F3 is doing a lot of work with the light squared bishops gone. And let's see what white's going to do next. It's going to be like rook E1, F5, knight E4, knight B3. There are a few options here. Queen E4, bothering the rook. CC Slammer was ready for that, though, and quickly brought the rook to A6. And now grabbing space with H4 as well. That's a weird move out of left field. Big Fun is having a lot of fun this game, but that move looks a little bit too weird to me. These pieces need some untangling. You got to make a choice, you know. And you just took away E4 from this knight, so I think you're locked into knight B3 at this point. I don't see any other options anymore. Totally, Nordovik. If he had like a special event on stream, he could have like a tournament for his viewers where, and Hockey Chess Dude, you're a mod, maybe you could arrange this for him. He could have a tournament for the viewers where the player who wins the tournament gets a ticket to a game. That would be super cool. I mean, for those who want to go to a football game. Okay, so white plays this slightly weird H4 move, or very weird H4 move, I'm going to say. If white had, by the way, the knight on B3, the bishop on D2, and the rook on E1, then maybe H4 would be a great move. It would still be a little bit weird, but I might think it's a great move. Like, yeah, you know, we've maximized a bunch of our pieces. Now we need to push for some more space or something. You know, just keep gaining space on the king side, see what black does about it. But here I know for sure that white needs to be mobilizing the pieces more. It's not the time to be doing this. But black plays a non-obvious move as well. They lash out with F5, taking a square from the queen, but weakening the e-pawn quite a bit. But they're thinking, hey, I've already got this unusual defense set up with my rook on A6, so the weakness is not going to be a problem. Then they trade on E5, blocking the file up as well. And now black's got a fair amount of space too. They each do. Black's got this and white's got that. Space is about equal on this board. Getting pretty locked. The weird pawn structure that got weirder. The one thing we all agree on is that this game has a weird pawn structure, right? We might have different preferences of whether we want to be white or black and whose bishop we think is better, but everybody knows they got us a weird pawn structure this game. Move B3 doesn't do much for white because the bishop doesn't want to go here, but what it does is it avoids black maybe playing B3 as a pawn sack at some point and then knight B4 going after the underbelly. I don't think it's necessary for white. I would probably play knight F3, bishop D2, as you guys know by now. Just getting the pieces a little bit coordinated. Now white king starts moving around. They've got a lot of time compared to the other game we saw today with a super locked pawn structure. So there's more time for them to play out the later phase of this game with, you know, some calculation. There's also still room for H6, G5, or G4, or H5. So the position might not stay locked here. I also think B3 is a mistake, double Jared, yeah. All right, so white wants to put the king here because it's completely locked, I guess. And they think there might still be a battle at some point with these moves, and they didn't want to do it with their king on G1. Fair enough, that makes sense. Makes sense. I've got a hot tip that there might be another cool game with lots of pins. Jazzmatazz. See if I can find Jazzmatazz. Give me a second, folks. $33 players now. Holy moly. Trav Kuskin, one of our Tims, is playing today. That's awesome. Bob Ross, Blunderfest. Man, this term is huge today. What happened? Where did everybody come from? Awesome. Tim says if this rook... I guess Tim's not playing right now. Tim says if the rook on a6 were on g8, then black's position would be really good. Yeah, because they could break with h6 and g5 very fast, right? In general, their king's already on the safer side of the board. Their dark squared bishop's a bit better than white's. It feels like the game is slightly better for black at this point, but let's not underestimate that white maybe has this diagonal for their queen. Queen f8, queen g7, white gets the king fixed. Are there any performance-enhancing drugs you could try for chess? I have no expertise on that. There's probably something, but I don't know. I don't know what it is, nor what the side effects are, etc. So I have no experience with drugs at all. I've maybe taken Tylenol once or twice in my life. And general anesthesia. But I don't know what the drugs were for general anesthesia, but I imagine they're not performance enhancers for chess. And FIDE does have anti-doping regulations, so whatever the performance enhancing drugs are, you're probably not allowed to use them, Moscow, but there probably is something. This rook needs to get out from a1. Get out from a1. Exactly as Jared's saying, same plan we've been suggesting for a while for white. Knight f3, bishop d2, so this rook can go to the king side. Oh, we get knight f3. We waited for it, but we get it. Bishop d2, hey! Now suddenly we agree on everything, big fun. Cool. Very cool. Oh, I need a little stretch. Ow. That was not a good sign. All right, so the rook needs to back up. It doesn't. White just says knights are as good as rooks and just leaves the rook on h2. And then they agree to a draw. Fair enough. Once black plays h5, there's no pawn breaks for either side ever, right? So it's just a draw. And honestly, the knight's probably slightly better than the rook, so there's no point in taking the rook. Yeah. Draw agreed. Very reasonable. Very reasonable. All right. We go to 13 to 1700. As always, Oscar Chess, nice games. Yes. All right, let's check out this Jazz Mataz game. Jazz Mataz down to 30 seconds. Oof, and down to knight. Oh, why Suleiman down to 9 seconds? Take back. Take back. Trading rooks would be good. Taking the rook would be even better. Get that rook. Come on, Suleiman. No! Good. Oh, that's great, Oscar. 5-round classical tournament. That's much better. All right, out comes the knight, out comes the king. Endgame should be winning for white, but of course with seconds on the clock, it's always scary. You know what's crazy? If black goes h5, which they probably will, and you take, then f5 is checkmate just with pawns. Unless I'm sort of misseeing it, right? But we could confirm by putting it into the chess.com. Yep, that's checkmate. Okay, they lock up the whole queen side. So I guess now the only winning plan for white is to bring the knight over to attack this. It is Moscow. And I spent so much of my life doing it. So much roller coaster in David's life. King d6. Well, that lets the white king into f5. White declines. I mean, that's the end of the game when you get your king up here. That would be very nice for white to advance. A lot of these endgames are all about king position, folks. Just trying to get your king up a little bit further. Suleiman takes more space, still living off the increment. Both players, 15 seconds each. Do you know about your king? Yes! Yes! Knows about the king. Brings it up. And now black's going to do a last-ditch pawn sacrifice over here. White doesn't even look at what black does and sacks their knight. Maybe b5 will come next. I guess black doesn't quite have a breakthrough. White recaptures, so they are looking at black. Here comes the king for counterplay. Here comes the king. Will white play g5? Now white brings the king here, so basically just wasted time with the knight. Oh, it's going to be a race. Are they both going to get queens? Looks like only white gets a queen. Good job. And Suleiman's got 40 seconds now. That should be enough to win this position, no? The knight comes over to deal with the pawns. The knight comes over to deal with the pawns. White makes the new queen. The knight's covering b1. It looks completely winning. Queen could take on d4 or come to b8 is also another technique. Sort of just getting behind that pawn is also a safe approach. But yeah, taking out this pawn. And why Suleiman collects the huge upset against Jazzmatazz, who was 3-0, leading the whole tournament. What a big result for Y Suleiman. Very, very nice. Stan, vielen Dank. Vielen Dank. Really appreciate the support here. I'm feeling great today. Feeling great today. So much support coming in. And so many people in the tournaments. Woo! Fun, fun, fun. These tournaments are chess.com rated, Master Toaster. So you can see Jazzmatazz just had some rating points plundered by Suleiman, but that's fine. None of your ratings matter, least of all your online rating. And Jazzmatazz won 3 games before. I bet they'd gained 50 points already before losing these 50, you know? So it's fine. It's all okay. It's all okay. So let's open up an Opferschach game. Opferschach here playing black against Kale or Kaye EM. Yeah, in terms of just wondering, yep, they are chess.com rated. And these tournaments generally are, somewhat tough, Master Toaster, like a lot of the people in these tournaments are dojo regulars who do a fair amount of training, so you will run into some people who are stronger than their ratings. But, then you'll go play somebody else during the week who wasn't a dojo member, and you'll gain points back. Your rating will always return towards where it should be. So, here's the classic Opferschach style of chess. He's moving those side pawns. He's improving the scope of the rooks. Yeah. I'm sorry the timing doesn't work well for you, Master Toaster. Obviously, we're kind of a 24-hour dojo, so what we do is always going to be at a good time for someone and a bad time for somebody else. And when I run the tournaments, it's kind of run by my schedule. With obviously some attempt on my part to pick times that I think will be good for other people. Like for me, it would be better to do this during the week when my kids are in school, but then you all might be at work, so, Oh, Blunderfest's also here playing Hockey Chess, dude. Thank you, Celestial Sage. That is my mother's work. Okay, so now Black plays a French defense. And White's got these 2 knights out already. Goes for an exchange variation. That's actually logical, right? Because in an exchange variation, these moves won't be as amazing, and maybe the E-file could be more important. With 2 knights out, White might get there first. Plunges in with the knight before developing a new piece. I would have definitely moved out a bishop here, but, I have a very pedantic, old, classical style of play, I guess. Knight e5, bishop e6, bishop e2. Targeting the pawn. Now, of course, knight f6 is a developing move that defends the pawn, but Opfeshach increases the scope of the rook and says if you castle quickly, maybe you have to deal with this h-pawn hurting your king's position a little bit. So White decides to put pressure on e6 and f7, bring out the bishop, cover h3, maybe get the queen into the game. Knight f6, we're going to get a trade. White's going to want to play queen d3 to g6. No, they play knight g6. No, that doesn't seem right. The knight is almost certainly on its best square already, right? Queen d3, however, looks like a hell of a drug. To borrow vocab from Jesse, which, when you speak that well, people are going to borrow your vocab, Jesse. That's just how it is. Queen d3 to g6, that looks like a hell of a drug. Should be a pretty good position for White there. So to me, this would back up White's decision to go bishop g4, which was not an obvious move by any measure, right? But I think if we play queen d3, we kind of justify it. Otherwise, it doesn't really make sense that we spent 1, 2, 3 moves to go trade bishops on e6 when Black's bishop wasn't particularly good, right? So to me, the only justification would have been this queen d3 move. White goes into that weak square instead and then backs up, attacking, grabs the pawn. I expected queen e7, but White does have queen e2 there. So the king's on the run and White's now up a pawn. Not bad. Not bad work for that knight. It did a lot of hops and things kind of worked out. Wait a minute. Did White get too comfortable with that knight? Why cannot Opfeshach eliminate it right now? I was thinking that White needed to retreat the knight here, much as I don't love retreating. Opfeshach checking carefully. Probably White just made a massive blunder, but you always want to treat your opponent's massive blunders with respect. You want to double check them. Spend some time. If it is a massive blunder, you won't need the time to win once you take advantage of the blunder. If it's not a blunder but a trap, having spent time will save you from blundering into the trap. C6, not taking the knight. Anybody want to put me out of my misery and tell me if I'm missing something about queen takes knight? This knight's not in striking range. There's no white piece that could be giving a tactical justification for this. There's just no piece in range of anything. C6. I almost feel like Opfeshach saw that he could take the knight and said, I don't want to win off of a blunder. Maybe he's telling his opponent, your knight's hanging, please retreat at next move, and playing c6 and giving them another chance. I feel like that's the kind of thing Opfeshach might even do, because I really feel like He saw queen takes knight. Trading queens would, of course, not be a reason not to win a knight, right? Because a queen trade is just going to make it easy to win the endgame with the extra knight. No, I think Opferschach is telling white, please protect your knight. And white does. But now white gets to play bishop f4 without ever retreating the knight, kicking the queen. Now it's just an amazing position for white, kind of gifted to them. Huh. Now this knight can't get out because the queen needed that square. So black's, yeah, a little bit low on resources there for those pieces. You can play knight a6, but at the moment, knight a6, you can't even come back to c7 because white's got it covered too much. So maybe bishop d6, trying to trade off that bishop, would be a way to get a square for the queen and then bring the knight into the game. Check. Queen e8 would be very nice if there weren't a knight on f6. Get the trade. Probably taking with the rook is good. Right now, this knight looks pretty well placed. It's kind of trapping in these pieces a little bit. Yeah, and this makes room for the next rook. White's position looks very strong. And this pawn is kind of like the underbelly of black's position. At some point, you could go maybe bishop b8, rook c6 to hurt black's queen side. This looks very bad for black now. Other than hanging that knight, white's made good use of the knight on e6 in the subsequent moves, right? Once they were allowed to play rook e1 and defend it, then, you know, kicking the queen to a bad square, forcing the king to a bad square, getting the rook to the 6th rank. This looks like very strong play from white. Yeah. Hey, Randy, if you want to join in, there's still time to play 1 or maybe even 2 games here in the tournament. You'll have to navigate via the Chess Dojo Club because the !play command is just a Twitch thing. On Twitch, there are like automatic messages in the chat to give people info. Yeah, I think Foos Chess that Opferschach is somebody like with a perspective somewhat similar to mine. You know, he's interested in investigating interesting ideas, right? Like the clash of ideas is one of the things that he's most interested in chess, right? And there's elements of that are scientific or artistic, and you know, sometimes we also try to win our games, of course, which is the sport aspect, right? So folks, people say, for anyone who's not been in the chess community for a while, there's been an eternal discussion of whether chess is a game, a sport, an art, or a science. And yeah. Wishay?
I'm just wondering what time you're going to be done, if we should wait for it to eat lunch with you or not. I've made a nice lunch.
Probably another 10 to 15 minutes. For me.
Okay.
If that's all right.
That's fine.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, hockey chess, dude, that's my answer. I think it has aspects of all 4. And, you know, different people are more interested in different ones of those 4, and that's fine, right? So you can get the artist playing against the scientist, and you can get the scientist playing against the sports person, et cetera, right? And then, of course, most people will probably recognize more than one of those elements, right? Some people will be like, this is fun, you know, I'm playing for fun. By the way, Jazzmatazz came back from that loss that we saw. It's kind of unfair for Jazzmatazz that the one game of theirs we watched was the game they lost, in a sense, because they've won 4 other games and they're in first place, but that's the way it goes. Oh yeah, Rengon made a personality quiz? That's cool. All right, Randy, how do you navigate to play a game? So if you go to this Chess Dojo club here, right, you'll have to join the club, which maybe you have or haven't done already, but there should be a button somewhere to join the club. And then you want to scroll to current events probably. And under current events, you click on the proper tournament. This is the under 1700 group today, and this is the 1700 plus group based on your chess.com rapid rating. Pick the group that's best for you. Both tournaments are 15 plus 5 minutes. And just so you know, for the future, next week our tournament's going to be on Saturday instead of Sunday because of Mother's Day. Okay, so let's see what comes next. B4, kicking the knight. The knight still has a good square to go to. Knight gets off the back rank, and white plucks a pawn. Opferschach fights for space for the king here with knight e4, dealing with this knight. And white just develops the rook. Dang, that's classy, Kale. That's classy, just bringing out a new piece like that. Cold. All right, Jay-Z says, "Hi, David. I'm training for a classical chess tournament. I was wondering if playing Rapid and Blitz online is optimal for my chess progress, or should I not play online at all? What do I think?" I mean, optimal for your chess progress, Jay-Z, it's hard to say exactly what's optimal, but it's unlikely to be a bunch of Blitz and Rapid, right? It's more likely to be classical chess. Chess Dojo has a number of... Oh, that's great, Randy. You're welcome. Glad you made it in. Enjoy your game. Chess Dojo runs a number of classical tournaments online. We've got the round robins. That would be good practice. We've got the Open Classical. Should be a new one starting in about a week, right? Because they start at the beginning of January, March, and May. There should be one starting this week. And then every Friday night at 8 p.m. classical, yeah, we've got classical chess as well. Then in terms of optimal, I mean, you also want to be reviewing your games, talking about them with other people, getting feedback on your game. Whole bunch of stuff you want to be doing. You know, let me try and give you a link. Well, I don't know if I can send links on YouTube, but this will give you a training plan. And then if you want to optimize it and fine tune it, you know, talk to Jesse or Kostya or me or a chess teacher of some kind to try and optimize it a little bit more. So far, Kaye, great. F3, sorry, Kale, I'm guessing Kaye, I don't know which. The pawn controlling this knight is beautiful. This knight can come into b6 at some point to go after the d5 pawn. White's rooks are active. It's really not giving chances to black just yet. Oh! And there's a chance for black. As I say, giving black no chances, this comes in. Oof. Oof, that was rough. Yeah, this move did not look good. You know, leaving this bishop, you're creating a dangly construction. Even without the rook on c7, bishop d6 might have been a problem, by the way, right? It's just too dangly a construction. So at some point, you just have to say, sure, I will trade this bishop, right? Here, and then this. Right? And you just bring that knight from a4 back into the game, go after your opponent's weaknesses, and make some trades. But we get rook e5, bishop d6, and Opferschach's back in the game. Bishop takes f6. He's got to think, do you want to take here or do you want to take here? They both look potentially winning. Opfeshach picks here. And against rook e7, it might come out to be about the same thing. Oh, you're big fun with the fun pawn structures. Nice, Ibrahim. Yeah, you definitely created a very, very interesting and exciting game there. I would say, hopefully, you caught one or two useful tips there, like moving the knight and bishop out a little bit faster from the queen side will give you various options to try and open up the game later if you're more developed. Yeah, the personality quiz on chess.com is something that I made. And they redid it. They refreshed or renewed it. Oh, white leaves the bishop hanging and doesn't counterattack. Looks like it's Opfeshach's game now. I think they got the URL chesspersonality.com to house it on its own domain now. Hockey Chess Dude. Now the rook comes after the bishop, but black's got a rook against 3 pawns here. So, man, all that control from Kale, and then, living on the edge. They were trying to be very, very careful about not trading too easily, not just playing too simple moves, but sometimes you can play moves that are too complicated as well. Some people, when they've got the advantage, they just take every trade they can, and they slowly give up their advantage that way, They bring out the opponent's pieces, they give up the best squares. So there is something to be said for maximizing and not just blindly rushing into every trade. But here, white sort of overdid it because they tried to build like a very risky construction here with the rook and bishop. Also because, they weren't focused on bringing the knight back to the game. Like even here, rook c7, what's that for, right? We should be bringing this knight into the game. We should be looking to attack black's 2 weaknesses to improve our advantage here as white, right? So, this is the kind of position to be playing knight b6 or knight c5 or pawn to c3 or king f2, like some improving moves. But, yeah, this was risky. Black defends the bishop, gets a rook trade. Rook comes in, ready to clean up. Check-a-rooski. Oh, yeah. We're in full-on cleanup mode here. There's nothing necessarily unfortunate about the draw, Ibrahim. It was like a reasonable result from both of you. But, and who knows if knight b3, bishop d2 would have avoided a draw or anything like that, right? But you would have been in more of a position to look at pawn breaks if your pieces were developed sooner. I don't know, Moscow. I don't know you or Fischer that well, so it's hard to say. King d3, setting a trap. Rook g2, falling into it. Knight f4. And the game is back on. Holy moly. King f4 is desirable, but then there's knight d5. Wow, so we get another swing to the game. King d3. And rook g2. Oh. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. So now I guess the current score is white's up a pawn. White's up a pawn, and we are going to receive a raid right now. We're going to shout out Zephcat. Thank you for the raid. Appreciation to you. Hope you're having a great day. There's a link, folks, if you would like to follow Zephcat on Twitch, at least. There, you can see a little heart button. To those just joining us, we're coming towards the end of a viewer tournament that we run every weekend. Usually on Sundays from 9:30 a.m. Pacific until 12:30. And next week, it's going to be on Saturday, not Sunday. So if this tournament, if what you see interests you and you'd like to participate in this tournament in the future, next week it's going to be on Saturday because it's Mother's Day on Sunday. So on Sunday, you can do something nice for your mom. On Saturday, you can play chess. Yeah. I play King's Indian Defense mostly against d4, and I've been struggling understanding the Kali systems with b3. Do I have any wisdom for you? Find some annotated games by GMs in that opening line. So, king moved to g5. White makes a pass pawn. And Opfeshach gets out of this knight d5 check, so now the king can come forward. Okay, sounds good. I'll be right there. So white's up a pawn, but this h-pawn is in grave danger. There's bishop d6 or king g2. Not clear what the result will be of this endgame, huh? All right, goes with the bishop. As white, you almost want to sack your knight for that pawn, but that's not going to be good enough, is it? A good place to find annotated games. Okay, white goes for the c-pawn. I think black might tuck the bishop back on c7, pretty far away from the king. Hard to fork it and getting ready to move this pawn. f4 stopping knight g5 to h3. A little precision from Opfeshach saying there's no knight g5, there's no sack, we're literally just going to get a queen in a second. Uh-oh. That might be the end of the line for white. Opfeshach decided to stop and calculate. Scary. Scary. That's nice. I was thinking, bishop here. You're covering this pawn. You're blocking this pawn. Knight g5, king here, etc. Black's probably winning that endgame. But white's king comes here, and I guess there's a whole calculation to do. Instead, you just do the work at the beginning. Stop knight g5. Look at all your options, and that should be GG. Firouzja is a magician, so you're getting Firouzja instead of maybe Mikhail Tal in an older version of this hockey chess dude. Okay, white pushes the c-pawn. It's under control, so keep your cool. Opfeshach. Amazing that Opfeshach hung that rook and is maybe still going to win this endgame down a pawn in the end. Knight checks. So the idea is if bishop takes, white will get a queen as well. Now, black can win that way. Depends what they choose to calculate. You can also move the king away, keeping the pawn covered. But bishop takes knight, c7, queens, queens. You have queen d1 check at the end, forcing the king here. Queen c2, and you win the queen on c8. That's a calculation you can do as black here and win the game with 3 minutes on the clock. Opfeshach finds that you can move the king away. White prepares knight f2. Do not queen. We've fallen for this once before today already. You have to go back to f3 and then find a different response to knight g5. Do not let the knight go to f2 or the game starts all over. Tall is overrated, says Moscow. Wow. All right, you're less sane than Bobby Fischer. I know enough now. I finally know enough to say King G2, different square for the king. That'll keep the knight at bay very nicely. Those of you who were here on Friday for Friday night fights, this came up, that the king is well placed with 2 spaces between it and the knight. It prevents the knight from moving forward. It's not easily checked, and if the knight tries to come around the king, it'll still find itself in bad relation to that king. So King G2 is a very good-looking square for the king versus that knight. Usually where we want to start looking at first. Yeah, or promoting to a knight, Foos, would have been a horror for me because they're calling for me to join them for lunch down there, and I don't need to see the knight versus bishop endgame for 50 moves here. Absolutely not what I need for peace at home. All right, so white wants to take the bishop. I think we can just say that Opfashach is going to win the game, and I should go check on the family. I mean, it is a roller coaster ride here, and we're just gonna hope that the remaining sequence goes well for both these gladiators. Well done to everybody here today. Let me just give a couple quick shout outs to folks doing particularly well today. We have first place in the tournament right now, Jazz Mataz, followed in second and third by Nordovic and 316. And honestly, if Opfashach wins this game, I think he's going to leapfrog all the way up into second place. And then I'm going to close this tournament for a second and see who is winning our 1700 plus section. That's going to be King Chess 135. I don't actually know them. 1 point ahead of Poison Ivy. We've got so many people today, so many new players in our 1700 plus arena today. It's been amazing. And we've got in first place King Chess, then Poison Ivy, then Classic Chess Enjoyer, and then Associativity. So congrats to all of them. Hope everybody enjoyed the games today. And for those of you who didn't play, I hope you enjoyed watching the games, right? Or the commentary.